All right, we've made it. Unless you guys want to see a video of mine, here's Robbie's team and what I thought of his draft. So going in, Robbie wanted that number one pick. I knew he was going to take Gurley. That was obvious. Also knew Robbie was going to go really RB heavy to start out, so super duper obvious. Let's just dive right in. So first pick, Todd Gurley, no surprise, fantasy MVP last year for Andre, averaged about 20 points a game because those crazy wild last few games of the playoffs regular season, he had like that huge monster 42-point fantasy game in week 15 and 39.5-point fantasy game in the championship game. So he was just a monster. Nothing says he can't repeat what he did last year. He carried the ball 279 times for 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns, while also catching 64 passes for 788 yards and 6 more touchdowns. So that's 19 touchdowns and about 2,100 yards. That means he touched the ball roughly, a little over 350 times, roughly, a little under 350 times. That's a lot. It's a lot. But this is when you get that kind of workload. This is the difference between him and Melvin Gordon. When Melvin Gordon gets that kind of workload, Melvin Gordon scores maybe half as many touchdowns and maybe 3/4 as much rushing or receiving yards. Gurley gets a huge workload, but he's super efficient with it. He knows how to use it. So, get it. He was number one back last year. Probably be the number one back this year, maybe. That's the hope. That's why I take number one overall. I would have taken Bell because I like his consistency, but I can't not taking Gurley. He's awesome. So, not much to say there. You take that number one pick, and then you wait a long time. And you wait, and you wait, and wait. And so Robbie's waiting, and eventually comes back to him. He takes back-to-back Joe Mixon and Alex Collins. So I think he took Mixon at the, 28th pick, and Collins is like the 29th pick. So, pretty, it's a long wait. So Mixon is what I would call, if you watch film of him, like last year was his rookie year, he actually reminds me a lot of Le'Veon Bell. He's got that patience. He's got that decisiveness, that vision, that quickness. But there's a couple big, huge differences. Number one, Le'Veon Bell has an outstanding offensive line. Mixon has like a bottom 5 offensive line. Number two, Le'Veon has an outstanding quarterback who can get him the ball, and Mixon has Andy Dalton. And there's not a whole lot to say. Yeah. Number three, Le'Veon has had some really, really good offensive coaches. Say what you want about Todd Haley, who's now the Browns offensive coordinator, but he was the offensive coordinator of the Cardinals team that went to the Super Bowl. And before him was Bruce Arians, who just retired from the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, he won Super Bowls with Big Ben. So Bell's been put in a really good position. That's not to say, Mixon can't reach that talent that Bell has. I see the talent. With a couple more years, he could be Le'Veon Bell. But Bell has just had advantages, and they've really helped him, and he's taken advantage of them. So, good for him. But going back to Mixon, I thought coming out last year he was probably he might have been the best back coming out last year. I know Fournette went really high, and I like James Conner, but Mixon, for purely football perspective, was maybe the most talented because he can really catch. He's a very gifted receiver. Again, I would go over that patience. Like Le'Veon Bell and that decisiveness, but he can also really catch. He's got really good hands. So the problem is, again, he's on the Bengals, and the Bengals don't really know what they're doing with him. Like, they had Jeremy Hill, and Jeremy Hill was out there for half like the season, and then they still have Giovanni Bernard, and like they fired their offensive coordinator after Ken Zappis, and they promoted Bill Lazier, and now Lazier's still the offensive coordinator. So it's just there's a mess. The Bengals are a mess. Like I've said that a couple of times already about AJ Green, and they're just a mess. I think Mixon's the best offensive player other than AJ Green on that offense, but he's going to have to overcome a lot of stuff to be like really, really good. I mean, for all those things I say about him and how good he was the 33rd best fantasy running back last year. It's not great. I don't think he's going to be a top 10 running back this year just because for the reason I just laid out. Like, it's a huge, like almost every running back taken in the first round in our fantasy draft is probably going to be a top 10 fantasy running back. So by this point, I mean, we can count how many running backs have been taken for him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 15 running backs were taken before Mixon. And one of them, obviously is Jerick McKinnon, so, he blew out his knee. So 14 running backs. Could Mixon be a top 15 running back? I mean, I just named four. He was drafted as the 15th, 16th best running back, but is he going to reach that in the Bengals offense? I don't know. That's part of the reason why I didn't take Mixon. Love the talent. Don't love anything around him. System's not great. Quarterback's not great. Offensive line's not great. There's nothing really that screams to me, hey, this guy is put in a position to succeed. It's more like he has a lot of things that are to his detriment. So hopefully he's still as efficient. I could see him being a very good, reasonable RB2. I suppose he could be an RB15, a top 15 running back in fantasy. But I don't see top 5. I even see a hard time pushing top 10 for the reasons I just laid out. I just don't think the team's very good around him. So that's really the biggest issue. Then obviously, you take Alex Collins. Now, I had Alex Collins last year. I picked him up all free agency. I liked him. He was very solid, especially where he came from. Like, he was cut by the Seahawks, and he was on the practice squad for Baltimore, I think, the first couple games, and it took a couple injuries, and they put him in there, and he was the best guy. He looked the part. It wasn't until late in the season they really started giving him the amount of carries he deserved, which kind of annoyed me, especially like week 6. I'm just like, Alex Collins is the best running back on the team. Give him the ball. But I think Alex Collins is now, they realize that he's deserving of being the starting back, and I really appreciate that. He led the NFL, I believe, last year. He didn't lead. He was in like the top 5 of forced missed tackles, yards after contact, and rushes over like 10 yards. So he's a physical, strong, like, running back. He's never going to have, unfortunately, the one drawback is he's never going to have those big breakaway plays. He's not going to have like that 80-yard run that he just breaks away from everyone and just outruns them to the goal. That's not him. He's a physical runner. He'll get you like 25, 30-yard chunk sometimes, but that's really, someone will chase him down. But that's not to say he's not good, because he is good. He's really good. But at the same time, Baltimore's brought in Michael Crabtree, and, they're just trying, they got rid of Mike Wallace, yes, and, what was it? They had Buck Allen last year, and Kenneth Dixon got hurt before the year, which is why Alex Collins was brought in the first place, and he's back. And, Flacco's still the quarterback. I don't love Flacco, but, they're trying. I think the offense will be better. They got Torrey Smith from the Eagles, so to go with Michael Crabtree. So, do I love Flacco? No, but I gotta believe that offense got to be better, because it was just atrocious at passing the ball last year. Like, it was just so terrible. Like, it really was basically just Alex Collins, and Flacco was just a bum. Because they couldn't move the ball without giving the ball to Collins. They were in some really nasty Nasty games. Okay, I was thinking of John Brown. There we go. So it's John Brown, Willie Snead, Michael Crabtree. They brought in quite a few different guys. And I think they really have really bad luck with like tight ends. I think Hayden Hurst is already out for the season because he got hurt. I think, what was it? He was like their first round pick. And yeah, he's already hurt for the season. Yeah, he had surgery on his foot. Ugh. Like they need to really stop spending these first round picks or top of the first couple round picks on these tight ends because they just keep getting hurt and it's not working out. But anyway, getting back to it, Collins is solid. Having him as my flex is good. Would I rather have Tyreek Hill? Yeah, I would rather have Tyreek Hill. Would I rather have Amari Cooper? Yeah, I would rather have Amari Cooper. Would I rather have possibly like Royce Freeman? Yeah, I would. Especially over Joe Mixon. So like, that's really the issue I have. Like, it's not that I don't think Alex Collins and Joe Mixon aren't talented, because they are. But like, there's a reason they fell that far. There's a reason I didn't pick them up either. Collins, for one, is in an offense that just it's bound to be better. And Mixon's in an offense that I don't know is going to get better. It might get worse because it's pretty bad. But neither of those situations really helps them. Like, they're just not... It's not great for either of them. So, do I like the picks? I mean, I can understand loading up on running back. I totally get, like, taking one of them to team with Gurley. That I get. The other one to start at flex, I think, I mean, yeah, if you want to start running back at flex, yeah, okay, I can get on board with that. But, I mean, there were some pretty good receivers you could have taken. Like, I mean, T.Y. Hilton did get taken until 14 picks later. I don't really like T.Y. Hilton, but he still led the league in rushing like 2 years ago. Like, it's pretty valuable. So, I mean, obviously you did it because you didn't think you'd come back around and get a good running back, so I understand it. But, like, it's still like you're doing this with the understanding that you're basically doing wide receiver 0. You're not getting any good wide receivers, and it's basically what happened. Because the next round, you just totally, like... We talk about blowing picks, and I talk about stop taking quarterbacks high, and here you go, taking quarterback high, and there was no real reason to. You took Russell Wilson. You can say, I'm not even getting to, like, how good Russell Wilson is, because frankly, I don't care. It doesn't matter how good he was, because, I mean, it was a waste. And I can go through why, and we'll go through it, but, like, let's stop. We'll do the same thing I kind of did with Justin, where we just go through, like, this is what you've done, this is why it was dumb. So, 5 years ago, 2013, you took Matt Ryan, pretty decent quarterback. I think most people in this league would agree. You took him in the 4th round, right? So Matt Ryan, let's see, I have it here. He was He was the 14th best fantasy quarterback in our league. And you took him in the 4th round. He was like he was among the top 5 quarterbacks taken in our league, because you always take a quarterback, and you are always one of the first people to take a quarterback. I mean, we can really, let me see, like, now I got to really dig into, like, the internet and, like, find all of this stuff, because it's been a long time. Okay, so there were a lot of quarterbacks taken, because that was the very, very first year of the league. But, okay, so you wasted your first time. 4th round pick, Matt Ryan. He was barely a starter in the league. Okay, fine. You know, maybe we'll go back to the well and try it again. So 4 years ago now, you took Cam Newton in the 3rd round. All right? Cam Newton, 3rd round. I don't like Cam Newton. We just went over that in Justin's video. That was a while ago now, like hours ago, but I don't like Cam Newton. So where did Cam Newton finish that year? Well, that was, if I remember correctly, that was the year before his MVP season. So he was pretty terrible again. So, you know, he finished about 16th. He was the 16th best fantasy quarterback. So you used a high draft pick on a guy who should be a starter in our fantasy league. Okay, Maybe after 2 years, maybe something changed. No, nothing changed. Okay, so now we're gonna go 3 years ago. So we're gonna go to 2015 now. All right, so in 2015, what did we do here? Okay, so in 2015, we took a second round pick on Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck in the second round. All right, that's a huge reach. Well, maybe Andrew Luck's been really good. Maybe like he was coming off going to an AFC Championship game, and I talked about him being a top 4 quarterback in fantasy. Maybe he was like really good that year. No, he wasn't because he got injured and like he wasn't going to repeat what he did. So, you know what? I think, let's see. Andrew Luck was the 27th best quarterback in fantasy. So for 3 straight years, you used a top 4 round pick on quarterbacks who weren't worthy of starting in our fantasy league. I mean, I guess it's negligible about Matt Ryan being the 14th best, but I mean, I guess you could say he was the worst starter in our fantasy league. Let's go with that. You got the worst starter in our fantasy league at quarterback or worse. So I don't know why you keep going back to the well. I just gave you 3 years of evidence just on your team. Like, they say history repeats itself. Well, it has, and it's you taking quarterbacks high who disappoint you all the time. So you took Russell Wilson. Wilson was good last year. He's terrific. He was, I think, the number 1 fantasy quarterback. But, like, come on now. Like, did you watch any of those games? Like, the defense wasn't very good. They got into, like, a shootout with Houston against Deshaun Watson. He was on the run, having to throw the ball all the time. Seattle's no longer like the Marshawn Lynch have to run the ball kind of thing that they used to be. But, like, he has a terrible offensive line. I don't love his weapons in Baldwin. I took Lockett with Vivian, but that was much later in the draft. I don't love him. He got an extension, though, so they believe in him. And I still have no idea who the starting running back is, like Chris Carson or Rashad Penny. So really, you're just hoping and praying that Russell Wilson just does the Russell Wilson magic again. And he's as good as he was last year. I don't like drafting players where the peak is he's good as he was last year. Like, that's not a good strategy. I mean, I could definitely see Russell Wilson getting hit on a blindside hit, and there goes his knee, and there goes Seattle's season. Like, that's very, very, like, that could definitely happen because their offensive line's that bad. So, to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to take him in the 4th round before I take wide receiver, when I've shown you historically you do this and it doesn't work out, when I've shown you historically on championship teams it's really important to have a good wide receiver, that's why I don't like this pick, because you're hoping Wilson is as good as he was last year, and even if he is, let's go under the assumption he's the number 1 fantasy quarterback. Well, you took the number 1 fantasy quarterback in the 4th round. I picked up Deshaun Watson off free agency last year for free, and I got the 3rd best fantasy quarterback, and he was the number 1 fantasy quarterback for 7 weeks for me. So you used a high draft pick. I used no waiver dollars and got a guy for free. I'm going to take the guy for free. So the difference between Russell Wilson and Jared Goff is roughly, I will say this year, if Jared Goff's the top 10 fantasy quarterback and Russell Wilson's number 1, I think the difference will be maybe 3 points a game at most. And that's really the issue. You're hoping for the absolute peak of this guy, and the advantage is so slim, it doesn't really matter. The difference between like a star wide receiver and a decent wide receiver is much, much bigger than the difference between the number 1 fantasy quarterback and an average quarterback in our league, even with 14 teams. So there's a much greater risk that Wilson is not as good as he was last year and doesn't become like I think he's a back-end top 10 fantasy quarterback in our league. I think maybe he's like the 8th best or 9th best quarterback in our league. But like, do I want the 8th best or 9th best quarterback in our league taken in the 4th round? No, that's a waste. Like, I want a top 3 bankable fantasy quarterback in our league, but there is no real such thing, because like there's just too much risk of a guy getting hurt or like basically being able to replace him with someone who comes out of nowhere off free agency who's really good. So I say all this to illustrate to you my reasoning for why I don't like, again, it's wasting picks. You're wasting picks on a quarterback, and you're not changing. It'd be one thing if you could say, maybe I'll wait on a quarterback, a couple rounds or something. If you wanted to take him like the 6th round, I'd be fine with that. I mean, he was really good last year. I understand that. But, I can't justify to you taking a guy over a starter at wide receiver when you don't have one. I can't justify to you taking Cam Newton in the 5th round when he's had, last year he was pretty good, and his MVP year he was pretty good. But then the other, 5 seasons he wasn't very good. I can't justify that. There's no justification for it. What makes you think he's going to be good? There's a better chance he's going to be bad. So, it's not like you're picking Tom Brady here. I think Brady's different just because, he's just always really good. And you took Russell Wilson before you took Tom Brady, and that just seems insane. So, yeah, I don't like taking quarterbacks high because this is why. Because it doesn't really work out historically, empirically, on championship wise, any way, shape, or form doesn't usually work out. So long rant over. You took a tight end now, so you're still ignoring wide receiver. So you took Zach Ertz. I mean, I like Zach Ertz. He was very good last year. He was a top tier tight end. Greg Olsen went down, so he kind of just popped into that top 3 tight end role. And Alshon Jeffrey's hurt, and Carson Wentz is hurt, and Nick Foles was obviously really good in that Super Bowl, and Ertz will be a top tight end again. The hope is he doesn't miss games. Excuse me, I think he missed 2 last year, if I remember correctly, but he's a top tight end. I mean, for the draft value, that's not bad. I mean, Gronk went in the 2nd round, Ertz went in the 5th round. That's pretty good value if he stays healthy and, everything falls right. So I don't mind that. But again, you totally ignored wide receiver. There's a lot of wide receivers. Wide receivers super deep, so I understood why. But you should have taken at least one in the top 5 rounds. There had to have been someone on the board that you're just that guy could be a superstar wide receiver. Because what you draft at wide receiver is not superstars, man. All right, so here we go. So 6th round, right? You take Sammy Watkins. And he got a big contract from the Chiefs. Golly, man, it takes me back. So this is the 3rd team he's been on in 3 years. He was on the Rams last year. He was on Buffalo the year before. So now he's on the Chiefs for big money. Can anyone tell me when Sammy Watkins hasn't missed a game? During the season, I don't remember. I don't know. I mean, I know he was the number 1 wide receiver taken in OBJ and Jarvis Landry's draft class. But I don't know why. I mean, he was super talented, but the problem is he gets injured all the time. So if I have to bet on him playing or him being injured, I'm going to bet on him being injured. And that's not even taking into account Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt. Sammy Watkins is the 4th guy on that team. If you're going to take a wide receiver, at least take someone who, has a shot at getting a lot of targets. That's not Watkins at all. And he's not going to stay healthy. And you already have him on your bench for the first game. And that was the first wide receiver you took. So I hate that pick. That was instant no. You took Jarvis Landry next. I actually reasonably like Landry. He plays on the Browns. That's why he fell. There's bias against them. I understand. But he led the league in receptions last year. And Tyrod Taylor is a good quarterback. I like Tyrod. I will say it again. I believe in Tyrod. Tyrod is a good quarterback. But I don't know how long Tyrod's going to be the starter. I know they're going to put in Baker Mayfield at some point. I don't like Baker. Broadway, whatever you want to call him, Broadway Baker, what is it? Shaken Baker. He should have been the number 1 overall pick, and now he's their guy, and he's going to start at some point, and they're going to trot him out there, and they're going to say, oh, he's going to be great, and Landry's going to be the number 1 target. I know they're going to feed Landry the ball with Tyrod, and as long as that happens, he's going to be very good. But I don't know what's going to happen when Baker comes in, and that's why you don't want to take him. But will Landry get his 70 yards, 7 receptions a game? Yeah, he would be a PPR monster, but we don't play PPR. But he's really good in the slot. I mean, there's a reason why him and OBJ went to the same school, and they were really good, and they gave him this big monster contract because they believe he's a very good player. Do I think he'll be the number 9 fantasy wide receiver again? I mean, that's a tough sell because, I mean, Josh Gordon's on that team now. You know, Josh Gordon's really good. They're trying to help Njoku. They brought in Carlos Hyde. So I don't think he'll be a top 10 receiver again. But, you know, I could see top 20. So that's not bad. I mean, that's starting worthy. But that's basically now your number 1 receiver because you totally whiffed on the Watkins pick. Then, you know, now we're trying to load up on wide receivers to make up for the fact that we totally were negligent on them. So now we take Kenny Stills. I think he's in your starting lineup as of tonight, the day before the first game. I don't like Kenny Stills. All right, he got traded here for like a 4th-round pick from the Saints like a couple years ago, and he's like a speed guy, and he reminds me a lot of like kind of Will Fuller kind of, but like last year we had Jay Cutler. This year we have Ryan Tannehill. I do like Adam Gase. I would have taken Kenyon Drake, so we've talked about that, and I think Adam Gase is a good coach, but can Ryan Tannehill properly use Kenny Stills? Is Kenny Stills the number 1 option on that offense? Because I would say it's probably Devontae Parker, which I mentioned in the last video. Because Kenny Stills is kind of just, he's a big time, like, you know, speed guy. He's a speed demon. That's what he does. So, is he a starter? I have a hard time believing that. Is he a flex? Maybe. I mean, he was the 24th best fantasy wide receiver last year, so, you know, if you're a top 25 receiver, you're roughly a low-end flex. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's just, I just don't, like, it's not very, it doesn't have to be sexy because I know he's on your bench, so he's a good depth piece, but still, it's kind of just like, you know, this is a high floor, low ceiling player because he's not going to be anything more than he already is. Last year's the peak, so I don't know, you're hoping for the peak again. Same type of thing with the next guy. So he took Nelson Aguilar. I like him. I think he's finally starting to show some of that potential he took for why Chip Kelly took him in the 1st round. And Alshon Jeffrey's hurt. So that's, you know, all things in his favor. He was actually a top 20 receiver for most of last season, if you can believe it. He started to slow down towards the end, but he was actually the better receiver between Sammy Watkins and Kenny Stills. Nelson Aguilar was better than both. So, could I see that again? I mean, maybe. I don't know. I think they're trying to run the ball with Jay Ajayi more. But I think he could be a good flex. I mean, I think he's a better flex than Kenny Stills, that's for sure. And I think without Jeffrey, that for however long he is, he'll get some targets. I think he'll be good tomorrow. I think because he's still got some speed, but I don't love having him and Zach Ertz on the same team, and it's really weird to me that you took Nelson Aguilar and Kenny Stills, but you ignored like guys like Cooper Kupp, who I would have loved. You should have, or Julian Edelman, or like Keelan Cole. I just, you know, I would have taken guys who have been like the number 1 targets on teams, and you're taking guys who are like the number 3 targets on teams. It's just, you know, kind of weird. So, again, so after that, you know, we go defense heavy. So we got Cameron Jordan, excellent defensive lineman from New Orleans. He was top 3 at his position last year, averages 11 points a game. He had one big game against Detroit. Really, really good player. I say that a lot about defense players, though, because we're so deep. So, you know, I think it's kind of a reach to start taking defense now, but, you know, you fill the starting role, so whatever. You take Zach Brown next. Brown is a good linebacker. He was excellent for Washington last year. The only problem was he missed the last 3 games. He was still a top 15 linebacker, even though he missed those 3 games. So if he's healthy the whole season, yeah, obviously he's a top 10 linebacker as a position. That's easy, simple, done. You took Christian Kirk. That was a reach at the time, but I won't get into it because you already cut him. I mean, you've cut quite a few guys. So, I mean, I guess we'll go into the other things. We'll just go into, you got Mike Gillislee right now, who's the number 2 running back on the Saints because they cut both Boston Scott and Jonathan Williams. So I think he'll get some play because Kamara is the only other running back on the roster, and Mark Ingram's suspended. So he'll get some play the first 4 weeks, and that's helpful. And he had that really big game last year to start the season off for New England. But other than that, he kind of fell off the radar. But still, he'll get some play, so that's important depth. I dig it. Good free agency find. You took Chris Godwin now, the wide receiver for the Bucs. Has a whole lot of talent. Excellent player out of Penn State. Actually, one of the few picks I've liked by the Bucs in quite a while. I think he's going to supplant Deshaun Jackson. He got double-digit points to end the year last year. Had a really big game against New Orleans. People called it his coming-out party. I don't think the Bucs offense is going to use him properly, just like I mentioned with Mike Evans. Just like, they have Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard and Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson. And I'm just like, I'm naming all these players, and all these players have lots of talent, but you notice they always underperform because the Bucs don't know what they're doing. It's kind of like that. They don't know what they're doing. So he was the 61st best wide receiver. Could he be a top 50 receiver? I mean, yeah, I could see it, but he's on the Bucs. I watch a lot of Bucs games. There ain't no way in hell he's going to break the top 25 receivers. And it's not his fault. He's super talented. They just don't know how to use him properly because they're dumb. So, sorry. I feel like that's kind of a wasted pick. I like him as a player, but I don't think that's going to take you anywhere. You're going to cut him in a few weeks, if not sooner. Took Alfred Morris, you dropped him, and then you brought him back. Morris is now the starter in San Francisco, so good on you, good pick. Taking my handcuff. He's a good player. I'm surprised he's got himself so quickly familiarized in San Francisco, but he has a history with Kyle Shanahan, so I kind of get it. His 2 best years in football were his rookie year and his second year with Kyle Shanahan at the helm as offensive coordinator in Washington. So he was very efficient last year as a Cowboy. No one seemed to notice that. I was surprised they didn't bring him back. So I think he's a risky starter, but he's a starting running back, so that has value. So finding that late is really, really good. This is probably the best sneaky pick he took because it's already paid off. So people are going to be desperate for running back. Cough, cough, wink, wink, Joe. So, yeah, I get it. Starting running back, take it, go, and run. You had Jared Goff, you already cut him. You have Chris Ivory, who might be the goal line back for Buffalo. I mean, I guess he's going to get some carries if LaShawn McCoy's suspended. He's not a terribly efficient runner, and he runs kind of violently, but he's not very good. But he'll get carries because someone has to, other than McCoy at some point. There's no other offense in Buffalo anyway, so someone has to get the ball. So, okay, sure. Take a depth piece at running back. Let's go for it. You took Tremaine Edmonds. You already cut him. You picked up. You picked up AJ Bouye, the cornerback out of Jacksonville. Not sure what your obsession with cornerbacks is. I think that's dumb, but maybe you like him. Maybe he gets a bunch of interceptions. I don't know, but I don't take cornerbacks. I take safeties. Jake Elliott's your kicker. Obviously, he plays for the Eagles. Good kicker, solid. He was 13th best last year, so that's starter-worthy back end. But, maybe he's better this year. I don't know. He missed the last game of the season, so, you got Joe Schobert to finish out the team, the linebacker out of Cleveland. He might be the best linebacker in Cleveland, possibly. No, that would be Christian Kirksey. And Jamie Collins is on that linebacking core, too. Schobert had a really good year, but I think Kirksey, if he's healthy the whole year, is going to take some of those tackles. But I'm okay with that because Schobert's a good player. He'll be top 15 at his position at linebacker. Okay. So, how do I feel about this team? I mean, you have, to your credit, you have the best running back depth in the league. You always have the best running depth back in the league. You actually value running back, so I respect that. You've taken some wide receivers in hopes that someone, sticks. Maybe. I I would have liked more upside if you're going to take Gurley. I like Gurley, but like there's no DeAndre Hopkins or Julio Jones or Robbie Anderson or Rex Burkhead on this team. Like I like Alex Collins. He was the number 2 running back on my team that went to the finals last year. I like Joe Mixon, even though I'm not sure how much he improves on last year just because, again, the offense isn't great. I like Zach Ertz. I don't like Russell Wilson, but I guess he's your starting quarterback. You had a good draft. It's definitely better than some of the other teams. Even though you didn't make the playoffs, I definitely respect you as a manager for your teams. But to say you had an excellent draft would be a stretch. Like, I think even you would admit if you stack your team against Andres or Jose's, you probably lose 7, 8 of those games against them if you played them 13 times. So you got some work to do because, and you know that because you need some wide receivers. Like Landry might be the guy who's a starter for you, but you still need somebody else because it ain't Kenny Stills, bro. And it definitely ain't Chris Godwin. And it definitely ain't Sammy Watkins. I mean, I guess you're hoping it's Nelson Aguilar, but I don't see that one either because that was really big. Like, that was a huge year for him, and I don't know if he can repeat that, but you need somebody. But other than that, you try to fill holes. Your team's pretty good. You had a good draft, so I'm not going to give you, like, a really tough grade. I mean, I don't like your team's not exactly how I would pick your team because I usually go for, like, big upside, but it's not a bad team either. So you probably had a top 5 draft in our league. I would say I like your team a little bit better than, say, like, most of the other out-of-town guys even. I know I said Brian had the best out-of-town draft, but, like, I don't really count you because, like, Brian and Mac and Justin are all kind of together, and then, Ryan's over in Melbourne, and you're just kind of off on this island in Texas, so I don't really know what to make of you. So, like, I guess if I have to give you a grade, Andre, Jose have better drafts than you. I think your draft's better than Brian and the rest of them, though. I mean, I would have to say it's roughly around Eileen's area, maybe a little under Patrick. I mean, Patrick had a pretty good draft, and I really like some of his players, but, I mean, because he basically went triple. He didn't go triple running back, but because he has the back-to-back picks, it might as well have been because he got McCoy and Freeman and Howard. And if I stack McCoy, Freeman, and Howard against a triple of Gurley, Mixon, and Collins, I mean, as much as I like Gurley, and I really like Gurley, it's not all that long ago Freeman was the number 1 running back in fantasy football. So, you're around there. You guys are pretty similar, which is kind of weird. But I'm putting you in that range. If Patrick gets a B, you get a B. So, top 5 fantasy draft in our league. I'll guarantee that. But you do have some work to do because, I mean, your wide receivers aren't great, man. But you know that. So, there you go. That's all that's everybody else. If you want a video about my team, let me know. I can do it. It's not hard. I know exactly how I feel about my team, but I figured none of you'd be interested, so I didn't do it. Otherwise, there's your 13 videos, guys. I hope you enjoy.